Hey guys, tonight we're grinding sacred corn at dawn while Mayan priests calculate exactly when the cosmic jaguar will swallow the sun whole. You're standing barefoot on cool limestone, feeling kernels slip between your fingers as incense smoke burns your eyes. And somewhere in the pre dawn darkness, a priest mutters numbers that would make modern astronomers weep with envy. Here's the thing though, you're about to spend the next 20 years of your life learning mathematics so complex that if you mess up even one calculation, your entire city might starve because you told everyone to plant corn during an eclipse when the gods are literally eating reality itself. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing this community span the globe while we explore ancient wisdom together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Matati stone beneath your palms has been worn smooth by countless generations, each groove telling its own story of cosmic preparation. You've been awake since the planet Venus, what your people call Kukulkan's eye, first pierced the eastern horizon. The corn you're grinding isn't just any corn. These are the sacred red kernels, each one supposedly containing a fragment of the sun's essence, harvested only during specific lunar phases when the rain god Chayak isn't looking. Your teacher, a priest whose earlobes stretch nearly to his shoulders from decades of bloodletting rituals, watches your technique with eyes that have memorized the movement of every visible celestial body. He clicks his tongue disapprovingly. You're grinding counterclockwise when you should be matching the sun's path across the sky. This isn't just breakfast prep, it's a mathematical formula expressed through muscular memory. The cornmeal you're creating will be mixed with exactly 13 drops of virgin rainwater, collected only during thunderstorms where lightning strikes twice, and spread across obsidian mirrors in patterns that reveal when the next solar eclipse will occur. Mainstream archaeologists have confirmed that Mayan astronomical predictions were accurate to within minutes over centuries. But what they don't tell you in textbooks is that some priests claimed the corn itself could taste the shadow of upcoming eclipses, growing bitter exactly 260 days before totality. Around you, the temple complex starts waking up. Howler monkeys screech their morning complaints, probably gossiping about which deity owes them fruit, while Quetzal birds flash emerald and crimson through the canopy. You can smell chocolate being prepared in the royal quarters, mixed with chili peppers and human blood. Just a few drops. Don't be dramatic. The combination supposedly helps nobles see the mathematical patterns that govern planetary motion, though historians still argue whether this was metaphorical or if certain alkaloids in raw cacao actually enhance mathematical cognition when combined with ritual bloodletting. Your grinding stone reveals something strange this morning. The cornmeal is forming patterns you've never seen before, spirals within spirals that seem to pulse with their own rhythm. Your teacher's eyes widen. He's seen this only once before, 42 years ago, just before an eclipse so total that jaguars came down from the mountains thinking night had fallen early. He whispers a prayer to Itzamna, the creator deity who invented writing and mathematics, then tells you to keep grinding. The patterns in the meal are speaking, calculating, predicting, and what they're showing makes your teacher's hands tremble as he begins carving warning glyphs into soft bark paper. The bark paper beneath your teacher's obsidian knife isn't ordinary amate. It's been soaked in the fermented juice of morning glory seeds, giving it a subtle phosphorescence that makes the glyphs seem to crawl across its surface. You watch him carve each symbol with surgical precision, creating calculations that would take modern computers several steps to verify. The number system uses dots for ones, bars for fives, and a shell-shaped symbol for zero, a mathematical concept your civilization mastered centuries before Europeans stopped believing the world was flat. Your fingers are still dusty with sacred cornmeal as he guides you through the codex room, where hundreds of folded books contain eclipse predictions stretching back to the mythical date when the gods first played ball with human heads in the cosmic court. The musty smell of centuries-old paper mingles with copal incense, creating an atmosphere thick enough to taste. Each codex is a masterpiece of astronomical observation, painted with pigments made from crushed beetles, volcanic ash, and the blue clay found only in certain cenotes where virgins were definitely not thrown, despite what your Spanish visitors will later claim. The Venus tables spread before you look like abstract art until your teacher shows you the pattern. Every 8 sacred years, Venus returns to the same position relative to the fixed stars, a dance your people have been tracking for over 1,000 years. But here's where it gets weird. The cornmeal divination from this morning suggests Venus is about to do something the tables don't predict. Your teacher's voice drops to a whisper as he explains that sometimes, very rarely, the morning star stutters in its path, a phenomenon that coincides with eclipses so powerful they can drive the uninitiated mad. You're taught to read the bar and dot notation while your stomach growls for breakfast. Ironic, considering you've been grinding corn all morning. Each column represents a different astronomical cycle: solar years, lunar months, the synodic period of Venus, and something your teacher calls the shadow count that historians still argue whether it tracked eclipse seasons or the menstrual cycles of the moon goddess. Spoiler, probably both. The Mayans didn't see science and religion as separate. To them, mathematics was the language the gods used to write reality's source code. Your lesson is interrupted by a commotion outside. A runner has arrived from Copan, his legs streaked with mud, and his message urgent. He carries a jade pendant that grants him passage through enemy territories. Even warring cities pause their conflicts for astronomical emergencies. The message, carved on a thin sheet of jade, confirms what your morning cornmeal suggested. An unexpected eclipse is coming, one not predicted in any of the standard tables. Your teacher's reaction is fascinating. Instead of panic, there's almost excitement in his eyes. He explains that these wild eclipses, as he calls them, are opportunities to refine the mathematical models. He pulls out a codex you've never seen before, its pages black with silver glyphs that seem to shift in the lamplight. This is the Error Codex, where generations of astronomers recorded every time reality didn't match their predictions. It's basically the universe's bug report, written in beans and bars. The mathematics involved in predicting eclipses makes your brain feel like it's melting through your ears. You're tracking the intersection of two invisible planes in three-dimensional space using a base 20 counting system while accounting for the slight wobble in Earth's axis that won't be officially discovered for another 1,000 years. Your ancestors figured out precession by watching how eclipse paths shifted over centuries, though they explained it as the cosmic serpent slowly digesting time itself. As you struggle with calculations that involve multiplying sacred calendar rounds by Venus cycles, your teacher shares a secret. The most accurate predictions come not from pure mathematics, but from combining calculations with cornmeal divination, cenote reflections, and the flight patterns of specific birds during the spring equinox. Modern archaeologists dismiss these as superstitious additions to hard science, but your teacher insists each method reveals different aspects of the same cosmic truth. The corn shows probability clouds, the water reveals gravitational distortions, and the birds, well, the birds are probably just coincidence, but they're remarkably consistent coincidence. You spend the rest of the day copying eclipse tables, your hand cramping as you paint tiny dots and bars with a brush made from jaguar whiskers, supposedly more precise than regular brushes, though that might just be marketing. Each page must be perfect. A single misplaced dot could throw off calculations by decades. The pigments sting your nostrils, cinnabar for the red dates of sacrifice, Maya blue for celestial events, and a disturbing yellowish green made from tree frog secretions that may or may not cause mild hallucinations. Your teacher claims the visions help with non-linear mathematical thinking. You're starting to believe him. The stone stairs descending into the cornmeal divination chamber are slick with condensation and the occasional offerings of pulque that priests splash for the underground deities. Your bare feet find purchase on grooves worn by countless astronomers who've made this descent, each seeking answers in kernels and shadows. The temperature drops 20 degrees as you spiral downward, and you're grateful for the rough maguey fiber cloak your teacher draped over your shoulders. It smells like wet dog, but keeps the subterranean chill from settling into your bones. The chamber opens before you like the throat of some massive stone beast. Phosphorescent fungi provide an eerie blue-green glow that makes everyone look slightly dead, which is probably intentional given that you're technically entering the upper levels of Xibalba, the underworld. The ceiling is carved with star maps so detailed you can track the precession of constellations throughout the year, though some star groupings don't match anything visible from Earth. Historians still argue whether these represent ancient observations of supernovae or just artistic license from a sculptor who'd been hitting the fermented cacao a bit too hard. Your teacher leads you to the primary divination platform, a perfectly circular depression in the limestone floor about 3 meters across. The surface has been polished to mirror perfection and inlaid with obsidian markers corresponding to major celestial bodies. This is where corn kernels become cosmic maps, where agricultural mathematics transforms into astronomical prophecy. The platform is already prepared with the morning's sacred cornmeal spread in a thin layer, waiting for the kernels that will reveal eclipse patterns. The kernels themselves aren't random selections from the harvest. Each one has been chosen for specific qualities, color variations that correspond to planetary influences, size ratios that match celestial proportions, and tiny imperfections that supposedly indicate gravitational anomalies. You watch your teacher select them with the focus of a jeweler examining diamonds, occasionally holding one up to the fungal light and squinting at internal structures invisible to your untrained eye. He mutters about Venus kernels and shadow seeds, terminology that won't appear in any archaeological paper because it sounds absolutely bonkers to anyone who hasn't spent years studying Mayan agricultural astronomy. The divination process begins with you spacing exactly 260 kernels around the platform's edge, one for each day in the sacred calendar. Your teacher pours a libation of balché, a mildly psychoactive honey wine that tastes like someone mixed mead with tree bark and regret, into the center, then begins dropping additional kernels one by one. Each kernel's landing position is significant, creating patterns that trained eyes can read like astronomical charts. The way they bounce, cluster, or roll reveals gravitational influences that won't be mathematically described for another millennium. What happens next makes your rationalist brain do backflips. The kernels begin moving on their own, creating formations that mirror planetary positions during upcoming eclipses. Your teacher insists this is due to microscopic vibrations in the limestone caused by underground water flow, but that doesn't explain why the patterns match eclipse predictions with creepy accuracy. A cluster near the obsidian Mars marker suggests a partial solar eclipse in 4 months. A long line of kernels between the Venus and Sun positions indicates something your teacher calls a transit shadow, an event so rare that the last priest to witness one tried to explain it using interpretive dance and was subsequently retired to a nice quiet temple in the countryside. You're taught to read the patterns like a three-dimensional map projected onto a flat surface. The cornmeal represents the celestial sphere. The kernels are planetary bodies, and their relationships reveal future astronomical events. It's essentially an analog computer made from food, which sounds ridiculous until you remember that your civilization invented zero, predicted eclipses centuries in advance, and built pyramids aligned to stellar positions with precision that makes modern engineers weep into their laser levels. The underground chamber serves multiple purposes beyond divination. The constant temperature and humidity make it ideal for long-term astronomical observations. No atmospheric distortion down here. Carved channels in the walls can be filled with water to create perfectly still reflecting pools, turning the entire room into a massive camera obscura during certain celestial events. Your teacher shows you marks on the walls where generations of astronomers tracked the precise positions of eclipse shadows, building a database of observations that spans centuries. Strange acoustic properties in the chamber mean that certain frequencies cause the cornmeal to form standing wave patterns. Your teacher demonstrates by humming a low note that makes the meal arrange itself into concentric circles. He claims each planet has its own frequency, and by combining tones, you can model gravitational interactions. This sounds like New Age nonsense until you realize your ancestors were using sound waves to visualize mathematical relationships that wouldn't be formally described until Newton invented calculus, and even he would have been impressed by the corn-based methodology. The session ends when a water clock in the corner releases its final drop, marking the passage of exactly 1/20th of a day. You've been underground for over an hour, though it feels like minutes. Your teacher carefully collects the kernels. They'll be burned as offerings to the mathematical gods, their smoke carrying eclipse predictions to the celestial realm. The cornmeal gets swept into special containers, saved for paint pigments that will illustrate the next codex. Nothing is wasted in this process. Even randomness serves a purpose in the grand mathematical machinery of Mayan astronomy. The Venus tables spread across the temple's eastern wall make your eyes water, not from their complexity, though that's certainly headache-inducing, but from the pigments used to paint them. The cinnabar red contains enough mercury to make a modern safety inspector faint, while the blue is so intense it seems to vibrate against the limestone. You're learning why Mayan astronomers feared the morning star more than any eclipse. And honestly, after hearing the stories, you're starting to side-eye Venus yourself every dawn. Your teacher begins with the basics. Venus completes 5 synodic periods in exactly 8 solar years, a ratio so perfect it seems like the gods were showing off. But the Mayans didn't just track Venus for its mathematical beauty. They believed the planet was actively malevolent, shooting invisible darts that caused skin diseases, crop failures, and really awkward family dinners. The Venus tables predict when these attacks are most likely, allowing rulers to schedule indoor activities during high-risk periods. It's basically the world's first astronomical weather app, except instead of rain warnings, you get 74% chance of cosmic death rays. The glyph for Venus looks like a star with googly eyes, which seems whimsical until you learn those eyes represent the planet's dual nature as both morning and evening star. Your ancestors figured out these were the same celestial body centuries before the Greeks stopped arguing about it. The tables track Venus through its entire 584-day cycle, 8 days of invisibility during superior conjunction when Venus hides behind the sun like a cosmic coward, 263 days as evening star, 8 days invisible during inferior conjunction, and 263 days as morning star. The remaining days account for variations that your teacher cryptically attributes to Venus being moody. And what really bakes your brain is the correction formula built into the tables. After 61 Venus years, or 104 solar years, the calculations drift by about 5 days. The Mayans solved this by occasionally subtracting 4 days from their count, a mathematical adjustment so elegant it wouldn't be improved upon until atomic clocks. Your teacher shows you the special glyphs that indicate when to apply these corrections, painted in a green pigment made from copper oxide and bat guano that smells exactly as appetizing as it sounds. The Venus tables don't just track the planet's position, They correlate its movements with eclipse cycles, creating a predictive matrix that makes modern spreadsheets look quaint. When Venus reaches certain positions relative to the eclipse season, bad things happen, really bad things. The kind of bad things that make rulers commission new pyramids just to appease the astronomical anxiety. Your teacher shows you records of historical disasters. The Great Drought of 536 CE. Venus was at maximum eastern elongation during a solar eclipse. The collapse of Teotihuacan. Venus emerged as morning star on an eclipse day. And that time, everyone in Palenque got explosive diarrhea. Okay, that might have just been bad pozole, but Venus was definitely acting suspicious. The fear of Venus reaches peak paranoia during heliacal risings, those first appearances as morning star after conjunction. Warriors won't battle, merchants won't travel, and pregnant women cover their bellies with obsidian mirrors to reflect Venus's evil influence back to the sky. The astronomers have calculated these dangerous days centuries in advance, marking them in the codices with skull glyphs that basically scream, "Stay inside, Venus is feeling stabby." The modern historians still argue whether this was based on actual observations of increased solar radiation during certain Venus positions, or just really successful fear-mongering by the astronomical priesthood. You're taught to perform the Venus calculations using beans, sticks, and an counting board that looks like someone crossed an abacus with a Ouija board. Each position represents different powers of 20, and you move the beans through configurations that track multiple astronomical cycles simultaneously. It's like playing cosmic chess, where all the pieces are trying to kill you, and the board occasionally predicts the end of the world. Your fingers quickly learn the patterns. 5 beans here means Venus is safe. 13 beans there means cancel all outdoor weddings for the next month. The practical applications of Venus tracking extend beyond doom prevention. Farmers use the tables to time corn planting, ensuring seeds go in the ground when Venus is too busy being an evening star to murder their crops. Midwives consult the Venus position before delivering babies, supposedly because children born during certain configurations have natural mathematical abilities, or possibly just anxiety disorders from gestating under cosmic threat. Even architects factor Venus into their building plans. Doorways face specific directions to minimize exposure during high-risk periods, creating cities designed around astronomical paranoia. Your lesson culminates in a terrifying revelation. The Venus tables suggest an upcoming rare alignment where the morning star emerges during a total solar eclipse while Mars is at opposition. This triple threat hasn't occurred in over 400 years, and the last time it did, an entire city abandoned their homes and moved inland. Your teacher isn't saying you should panic, but he's definitely suggesting you might want to start stockpiling obsidian mirrors and practicing your underground cave-dwelling skills. The calculations are clear. In 18 months, Venus is going to throw the mother of all cosmic tantrums, and the eclipse will give it a perfect cover for its shenanigans. The bloodletting ceremony begins at midnight because apparently the gods have no respect for your circadian rhythms. You're standing in the temple's inner sanctum, watching nobles prepare to pierce their tongues with stingray spines to commune with the sky serpents that devour suns. The air is thick with copal smoke and anticipation, plus a distinct metallic smell that makes you realize these astronomical observations are about to get very biological. Your teacher hands you a bowl made from a human skull. He assures you it was donated willingly by a mathematician who wanted his head to keep serving astronomy after death, to collect the sacred blood that will reveal eclipse patterns. The connection between bloodletting and astronomy isn't metaphorical. Your people believe blood contains liquid starlight, concentrated celestial essence that can be released to create a temporary communication channel with the cosmic forces. The nobles participating tonight have been fasting for 20 days, consuming only water filtered through jade beads and honey collected during meteor showers. Their blood is supposedly purer now, more receptive to astronomical visions. You're skeptical until you remember that extreme fasting does cause hallucinations, and if you're going to hallucinate anyway, you might as well get eclipse predictions out of it. Lady 6 Sky, the ranking astronomer priestess, goes first. The stingray spine she's using has been carved with microscopic stellar maps, invisible to the naked eye, but supposedly detected by the blood as it flows past. She threads it through her tongue with practiced ease, while you try not to sympathetically gag. The blood drips onto bark paper, painted with constellation patterns, and where it lands determines which celestial bodies will be involved in upcoming eclipses. It's essentially a very painful, very biological form of random number generation, except the numbers aren't random if you believe blood remembers the stars it came from. The blood patterns form quickly, spreading across the paper in fractal designs that mirror the universe's large-scale structure, though your ancestors call them the roots of the cosmic tree. Your teacher interprets each splatter with the intensity of someone reading tea leaves, if tea leaves could predict the death of suns. A elongated droplet pointing northeast suggests a lunar eclipse visible from Tikal. A circular pattern with radiating tendrils indicates solar prominences during totality, something that won't be photographed for another 1,000 years, but which your people have been documenting through blood divination for centuries. Lord Smoking Squirrel, yes, that's his actual name glyph, and no, he doesn't find it funny, takes his turn with an obsidian blade so sharp it makes surgical scalpels look like butter knives. He's going for the advanced technique, diagonal hung perforation combined with earlobe puncturing to create a blood circuit that supposedly enhances astronomical sensitivity. The resulting blood flow creates patterns on specially prepared amate paper that's been soaked in morning glory extract. Under torchlight, the patterns seem to move, showing the future paths of celestial bodies across the night sky. Historians still argue whether this is due to the psychoactive properties of the morning glory or just really creative pattern recognition by sleep-deprived astronomers. You're not required to participate directly, thank the feathered serpent, but you're tasked with recording the visions that participants report while in their blood loss-induced trance states. The descriptions are wild. Serpents made of stars swallowing their own tails, jaguars with mirror eyes reflecting infinite eclipses, and mathematical equations that solve themselves in four-dimensional space. One noble claims to see the exact date when the sun will be devoured permanently, December 21st, 2012, but everyone dismisses him as a dramatic attention seeker who's lost too much blood. The practical astronomy happens between the mysticism. As nobles bleed and hallucinate, trained observers watch the actual sky through jade viewing tubes, comparing the visions to real celestial positions. When multiple bloodletters independently describe the same future astronomical event, it's recorded as a high probability prediction. It's basically crowdsourcing eclipse forecasting using altered states of consciousness as the communication medium. The fact that it works disturbingly well suggests either your ancestors were onto something profound or confirmation bias is a hell of a drug. The ceremony reaches its climax when Lady Six Sky, now swaying from blood loss and possibly seeing through time, begins drawing eclipse paths directly onto the temple floor with her own blood. The patterns match the Saros cycle, the 18-year, 11-day, 8-hour period between similar eclipses with impossible precision. She's essentially become a human astronomical calculator, processing celestial mechanics through hemorrhaging. Your teacher whispers that this is why astronomer priests rarely live past 40. The blood remembers the stars, but the body pays the price for cosmic knowledge. As dawn approaches and the bloodletters are carefully bandaged with cloth soaked in honey and prayer, you compile the night's predictions. 3 independent visions confirmed a total solar eclipse in 7 months. 5 participants saw the same lunar eclipse sequence, and everyone, without exception, reported sensing something massive approaching from the direction of the Pleiades. Something that won't arrive for centuries, but whose gravitational influence is already affecting eclipse patterns. Your teacher files this last prediction in the Worry About It Later Codex, which is already worryingly thick. The citywide eclipse demon negotiations begin 3 days before the predicted solar eclipse, because apparently even cosmic horror requires proper scheduling. You're painting your entire body with a mixture of ground hematite and iguana blood, creating protective symbols that supposedly prevent the eclipse demons of Xibalba from recognizing you as edible. The paint job takes 4 hours and itches like mosquito bites on poison ivy. But it's better than having your soul devoured by star demons who view reality as a casual snack. The main plaza transforms into a massive theatrical stage where the entire population will act out the cosmic drama of eclipse prevention. Your role is Terrified Corn Plant number 47, which involves a lot of rhythmic swaying and occasional screaming when the demon actors get too close. The lead demon, played by the high priest in a costume made from actual jaguar pelts and what appears to be most of a crocodile, rehearses his entrance by practicing his "I'm going to eat the sun" walk. It's surprisingly effective. Several children start crying just from the rehearsal. The negotiations follow a strict protocol developed over centuries of eclipse survival. First, the city offers substitutes for the sun: massive corn cakes painted with gold dust, obsidian mirrors polished to solar brightness, and, in extreme cases, butterflies bred specifically for their iridescent wings that supposedly taste like concentrated daylight. The demons, through their masked representatives, reject each offering with increasingly dramatic gestures. This part of the ceremony can last hours, with both sides haggling like it's a cosmic farmer's market where the produce is reality itself. Your teacher explains the theological economics behind the negotiation. Eclipse demons aren't evil, just hungry. They exist in the space between light and shadow, feeding on luminosity itself. The sun is basically the ultimate buffet, and eclipses happen when the demons' hunger overcomes their fear of the god's punishment. The city's job is to convince them that eating the sun isn't worth the cosmic indigestion it'll cause. It's interspecies diplomacy with extinction as the stakes. The real astronomical observations happen simultaneously with the performance. While most citizens focus on the dramatic negotiations, trained observers stationed on pyramid tops track the eclipse's actual progress using obsidian mirrors and crystal viewing devices. They communicate with flag signals, updating the negotiation script in real time. If the eclipse is proceeding faster than expected, the demon actors become more aggressive. If it's slower, the city's offers become stingier. It's improvisational theater guided by celestial mechanics. The children's role in the ceremony is particularly intense. They're dressed as baby suns, covered in yellow feathers and gold paint, and parade around the plaza singing mathematical songs that supposedly remind the eclipse demons of when the universe was young and math was edible instead of abstract. The lyrics include multiplication tables set to melodies that sound like someone gave a parrot a xylophone, but the demons seem to find it nostalgic. One child forgets his lines and starts singing about his favorite pet turkey instead. Nobody corrects him because, honestly, it's not any weirder than the official version. The negotiations' climax comes when the city makes its final offer, a promise to feed the demons with the light from next year's harvest fires. It's essentially a cosmic IOU paid in photons. The demon representatives pretend to consider this while the actual eclipse reaches totality. The plaza falls silent except for the sound of 10,000 people trying not to breathe too loudly. Even the howler monkeys shut up, which is genuinely more disturbing than the disappearing sun. This is when the real magic happens. If by magic you mean community psychology so effective it borders on supernatural. As the sun vanishes, the entire city acts out a complex dance that supposedly generates replacement light through human movement. It's based on the observation that fireflies increase their blinking during eclipses, so clearly bioluminescence is the universe's backup generator. Everyone spins, jumps, and waves their arms in patterns that mirror planetary orbits. From above, it probably looks like the world's largest interpretive dance piece about gravitational dynamics. The astronomical precision hidden in the ceremony is staggering. The dance movements correspond to actual celestial mechanics. Your spinning represents Earth's rotation, while synchronized group movements show lunar orbital patterns. The demon's approach and retreat follows the path of the moon's shadow across Earth's surface. It's a human orrery, accurate to within minutes, disguised as desperate negotiation with cosmic monsters. Your ancestors turned citizen science into performance art with existential stakes. When totality ends and the first sliver of sun reappears, the city erupts in celebration. The demons have been successfully negotiated with for another cycle. The priest playing the lead demon removes his mask and immediately faints from heat exhaustion. Those crocodile skins don't breathe. Children chase each other with toy eclipse demons made from corn husks. And you, covered in itchy paint and exhausted from playing a terrified plant, realize you've just participated in one of humanity's most sophisticated astronomical education programs, disguised as a citywide LARP session. The eclipse predictions were perfect, the demons were appeased, and nobody's soul got devoured. All in all, a successful Tuesday in ancient Maya civilization. The obsidian mirror in your hands weighs more than guilt and costs more than most families see in a lifetime. A disc of volcanic glass polished so perfectly it makes modern telescope mirrors look like they were finished by enthusiastic toddlers. You're learning to track Ixchel, the moon goddess, whose mood swings directly correlate with lunar phases and whose menstrual cycle supposedly determines eclipse timing. Yes, your astronomical education now includes gynecological theology, because the Maya understood that if you're going to anthropomorphize celestial bodies, you might as well commit to the bit. Ixchel is complicated. She's simultaneously a young woman weaving reality on a cosmic loom, an elderly midwife delivering star babies, and a jaguar goddess who eats her own children when they misbehave, the children being various lunar features that disappear during eclipses. Your teacher explains her multiple personalities using maze kernel arrangements that look suspiciously like a lunar phase calendar mixed with a mood ring chart. Each kernel's color represents a different aspect. White for maiden, yellow for mother, red for crone, and black for currently devouring the sun because someone forgot her birthday. The obsidian mirror serves as more than just a reflective surface. It's a portal for tracking Ixchel's movements across her celestial home. The volcanic glass contains microscopic bubbles that create interference patterns when moonlight passes through them, patterns that trained eyes can read like emotional weather reports. Tonight, the patterns suggest Ixchel is in her waterfall aspect, which means an increased tidal activity and a higher probability of lunar eclipses. Also, everyone's joints will ache tomorrow, but that might just be the humidity. Your training involves sitting very still for hours, watching the moon's reflection while documenting every subtle change. The obsidian shows details invisible to the naked eye, the slight wobble of lunar libration, color variations that predict upcoming eclipses, and occasionally what appears to be the goddess winking at you, though that could be atmospheric distortion or mild hypoxia from forgetting to breathe. You're taught to scatter cornmeal on the mirror's surface in specific patterns that enhance these observations. The kernels act as tiny lenses, magnifying lunar features that won't be officially discovered until someone invents proper telescopes. The mathematical relationship between Ixchel's cycles and eclipse prediction is surprisingly robust. Every 173.31 days, the moon returns to the same point in its eclipse cycle, what modern astronomers call the eclipse season. Your ancestors noticed this corresponded exactly to 6 lunar months, which they interpreted as Ixchel's pregnancy period. She's constantly pregnant with various celestial phenomena. It's exhausting just thinking about it. The goddess gives birth to eclipses, explaining why they appear in families separated by 6 month intervals. The truly weird part is the maze divination specifically for lunar goddesses. Unlike the aggressive corn throwing used for solar predictions, Ixchel prefers gentle placement of kernels in spiral patterns that mirror the moon's apparent path across the sky. The kernels must be from plants grown by women who've given birth during full moons. Apparently, their corn retains lunar memory. You watch your teacher, a 70-year-old man who's definitely never given birth to anything except kidney stones, delicately arrange these special kernels while humming what he claims are womb songs, taught by Ixchel herself in dreams. The patterns reveal upcoming lunar moods with disturbing accuracy. A tight spiral means Ixchel is feeling protective, no eclipses for several months. Scattered kernels suggest emotional volatility. Expect partial eclipses and weird tidal behavior. When the kernels form a perfect circle, with one in the center, everyone starts preparing for a total lunar eclipse where the moon turns the color of menstrual blood. Their comparison, not mine, but it's accurate enough to make modern astronomers uncomfortable. Historians still argue whether the Mayas' association of lunar cycles with menstruation was coincidental or based on actual observations of synchronized fertility patterns in communities exposed to consistent moonlight. Your teacher insists that women who sleep under direct moonlight for entire lunar months will synchronize their cycles with Ixchel, creating a city-wide hormonal calendar that helps predict eclipse timing. It sounds like pseudoscience until you realize your civilization has been tracking these correlations for over 1,000 years with statistical significance that would make peer reviewers weep. The practical applications extend beyond eclipse prediction. Midwives use Ixchel's mood charts to determine optimal birthing times. Apparently, babies born during certain lunar phases are better at mathematics, though they're also more likely to become astronomers and develop anxiety disorders. Farmers plant root vegetables during Ixchel's underground phases and above-ground crops when she's celestially visible. Even the city's sewage management follows lunar patterns, though nobody wants to explain exactly why. Your evening ends with a ritual that's part astronomy lesson, part group therapy session. Everyone brings their obsidian mirrors to the temple roof and angles them to create a massive compound eye, reflecting the moon from dozens of perspectives simultaneously. The combined image reveals details no single mirror could show: surface features that map upcoming eclipse paths, color variations indicating Ixchel's emotional state, and patterns that suggest the moon might be slightly egg-shaped, a fact that won't be confirmed for another millennium. It's crowdsourced lunar observation using technology that's literally sharp enough to perform surgery, all in service of understanding a goddess whose mood swings control the tides. The sacred cenote yawns before you like the earth's attempt at making a perfectly circular scream. 60 feet of sheer limestone walls dropping into water so clear You can see the offerings from centuries of astronomical anxiety glittering on the bottom. You're carrying a basket of jade beads, each one carved with eclipse glyphs and worth more than your village produces in a year. The morning mist rising from the sinkhole carries the distinct smell of mineral water mixed with bat guano and existential dread, because nothing says astronomical verification quite like throwing treasure into a hole and hoping the earth spirits confirm your math. Your teacher leads the procession of astronomer priests, each carrying their own offerings: obsidian mirrors wrapped in corn husks, ceramic vessels filled with virgin honey, collected by bees that have never stung anyone, which seems statistically impossible, but apparently the bees keep records, and small copper bells that ring at frequencies supposedly matching planetary orbits. The cenote serves as more than just a convenient disposal site for valuable objects. It's a direct communication portal to the underworld's mathematical department. The verification process begins with reading the water's surface. This morning, it's peculiarly still, which either means the underworld accountants are busy auditing someone else's eclipse predictions or something big is about to happen. Your teacher drops a single corn kernel painted with cinnabar into the center. The ripples spread outward in perfect circles until they hit the cenote's walls and reflect back, creating interference patterns that trained observers can interpret like an aquatic spreadsheet. The patterns suggest your recent eclipse calculations are accurate to within half a day, which is pretty good considering you're using corn-based mathematics. You're taught the proper way to release jade offerings. Each bead must be dropped from a specific height calculated using the eclipse's predicted magnitude. A total eclipse requires a fall of exactly 23 hands, measured using the high priest's hands, because standardization is for quitters. Partial eclipses get proportionally shorter drops. The jade makes distinctive plinking sounds as it hits the water, and supposedly the tone indicates whether the earth spirits approve of your calculations. A high, clear note means you're right. A dull thud means check your math. A splash followed by bubbles means the spirits are laughing at your incompetence. The really expensive verification happens quarterly when they lower a volunteer astronomer into the cenote on ropes woven from virgin agave fibers. Not as a sacrifice, they pull him back up, but to commune directly with the mathematical spirits that live in the underwater caves. Today's volunteer is a young priest who's been fasting on nothing but honey water and ground pearls for a week, which supposedly makes him more receptive to numerical visions. He looks less mystically prepared and more about to pass out, but everyone pretends not to notice. Down he goes, wrapped in so many protective amulets, he clanks like a wind chime in a hurricane. The cenote's acoustic properties mean everyone above can hear him muttering prayers that sound like multiplication tables mixed with apologies to his mother for choosing astronomy over merchant trading. He stays underwater for exactly 260 heartbeats, counted by drumming that definitely doesn't help anyone's anxiety. Then gets hauled up sputtering prophecies and pool water. His vision confirms the eclipse predictions, but adds disturbing details. The moon's shadow will arrive 13 minutes earlier than calculated, suggesting either the Earth spirits know something about orbital mechanics, your surface calculations missed, or someone needs to recalibrate the water clocks. He also mentions seeing jade numbers dancing in formations that spell out future eclipse dates, though that might be oxygen deprivation talking. The priests dutifully record everything because even hypoxia induced ramblings have occasionally proven prophetic. The cenote also serves as a repository for failed predictions. When eclipse calculations prove wrong, the offending codex pages get weighted with stones carved with apology glyphs and sent to the bottom. It's essentially a liquid library of astronomical errors, preserving mistakes for future generations to learn from. Your teacher mentions that particularly spectacular failures get their own special section near the north wall, where the errors are so bad they've created their own gravitational field of mathematical embarrassment. The most intriguing aspect is the cenote's role in confirming long-term astronomical cycles. Divers, who train by holding their breath while solving mathematical problems because multitasking builds character, regularly retrieve specific offerings thrown in decades or centuries ago. By comparing the predicted eclipse dates carved on ancient jade with actual observations, they can refine their mathematical models. It's longitudinal study methodology using sinkholes and shiny rocks, but it works better than you'd expect. Your jade offering makes a satisfying plink as it hits the water, a clear, bell-like tone that suggests your eclipse calculations pass underworld quality control. The ripples form a pattern your teacher interprets as acceptable with minor corrections for atmospheric refraction, which is probably the best review anyone's gotten this month. As you walk back from the cenote, he mentions that next time you'll learn about the other verification method, training parrots to screech specific tones during eclipses and comparing their vocalizations to mathematical predictions. Because if you're going to verify astronomical calculations in the most complicated way possible, you might as well involve birds that can do basic arithmetic. Your apprenticeship in the astronomical priesthood begins with a cheerful reminder that you'll spend the next 20 years of your life memorizing number sequences that would make a supercomputer cry silicon tears. The training temple smells like brain sweat and resignation, with the undertones of copal incense that's supposed to enhance memory, but mostly just makes everyone sneeze during important calculations. Your fellow apprentices range from 8 to 40 years old because mathematical enlightenment apparently doesn't respect conventional education timelines. The first lesson is humbling. You must forget everything you think you know about counting. The Maya number system isn't just base 20. It's base 20 with exceptions, modifications, and special cases that seem designed specifically to prevent your neurons from ever relaxing. In the calendar system, the third position doesn't represent 400, 202, but 360, because 18 by 20 equals 360 days makes a better approximate year. This modification ripples through every calculation, turning simple arithmetic into a cognitive obstacle course where the obstacles are made of abstract concepts and the course changes depending on what you're calculating. Your teacher starts with the easy stuff, memorizing the 260-day sacred calendar. Each day has a number, 1 to 13, and a name, 20 different ones. creating a cycle that doesn't repeat for exactly 260 days. You must know instantly that 4 Ahau is followed by 5 Imex, that 13 Ben leads to 1 X, and that forgetting any sequence results in copying the entire calendar using a brush made from your own hair. By month 3, you can recite the calendar backwards while drunk on Balshay, which is actually part of the examination because eclipse calculations often happen during religious festivals where sobriety is optional. The real nightmare begins with Venus calculations. You memorize tables showing that 5 Venus years equal 8, solar years equal 2,920 days, except when they don't because of accumulated error that requires corrections every 61 Venus years. Your brain must hold multiple counting systems simultaneously: solar days, lunar months, Venus cycles, Mars oppositions, and something called the dark count that tracks invisible celestial bodies your teachers swear exist based on gravitational perturbations in eclipse timing. It's like juggling invisible balls, where dropping one means restarting a calculation that's taken 6 months. The memory techniques are bizarre but effective. You create mental palaces where each room represents a different astronomical cycle. In your Venus room, furniture arrangements correspond to synodic periods. The lunar chamber has 29.53 doors. The fractional door is really disturbing in mental space. The eclipse hall is a nightmare of intersecting planes where you visualize the moon's shadow sweeping across mental maps of the Earth. One apprentice claims his memory palace is actually a memory cenote, where he drops numerical offerings and retrieves them later, which sounds insane, but he hasn't missed a calculation yet. Physical training accompanies mental torture. You practice drawing perfect circles freehand because compass-drawn circles are spiritually lazy. Your circles must be so precise that water poured on bark paper flows evenly along the ink. You learn to paint dots and bars with mechanical precision, each dot exactly the same size. Bars perfectly parallel. Hand cramps are considered a spiritual experience. One student develops a tremor from overwork and is told it's the universe vibrating through him. He's promoted to senior apprentice because his shaky bars accidentally discovered a new way to represent fractional calculations. The advanced curriculum introduces concepts that won't be formally mathematicized for centuries. You study the precession of equinoxes by memorizing how constellation positions have shifted over generations of observations. The teaching method involves standing in the plaza at night while senior priests throw small rocks at you from different directions, each rock representing a star's position in different epochs. Getting hit means you've forgotten where that star should be. By year 10, successful students can dodge in patterns that physically demonstrate axial precession. It's educational and provides an entertainment for insomniacs. Sleep deprivation is built into the program because important astronomical events don't care about your circadian rhythms. You learn to calculate while exhausted, hallucinating, and occasionally convinced that numbers are talking to you, which might be true given how much time you spend with them. The final examination before advancement requires staying awake for 260 hours, 1 hour for each day of the sacred calendar, while performing increasingly complex calculations. Most students report that around hour 200, the numbers start making sense in ways that transcend normal mathematics. This might be enlightenment or just severe sleep psychosis, but either way, you're qualified to predict eclipses. The dropout rate is spectacular. Of your initial class of 30, maybe 3 will complete the full training. The others find respectable careers as merchant accountants, architectural measurers, or tax collectors, professions that require mathematical skill but don't demand memorizing the orbital parameters of invisible planets. Those who persist develop what other Maya call the astronomer's stare, a 1,000-yard look that comes from spending decades contemplating infinite cycles and cosmic periodicity. It's the same expression worn by anyone who's tried to explain eclipse mechanics using only corn metaphors. Your teacher ends today's lesson with an encouraging note. You're now 1/10 of the way through basic training. Advanced studies include memorizing eclipse paths for the next 400 years, learning to calculate planetary positions using only body parts as measuring tools, and something called theoretical cenote mathematics that models hypothetical water bodies on other worlds. The Maya astronomical priesthood doesn't just predict eclipses, they've created a system of mathematical mastery so complex that understanding it fully requires rewiring your brain into a biological calculator powered by obsession and maze products. The Spanish arrive with their horses, steel, and aggressive ignorance about astronomy, turning your temple into ground zero for the most devastating knowledge destruction since someone invented fire and immediately burned themselves. You're watching conquistadors pile centuries of codices in the plaza while Bishop Diego de Landa delivers a sermon about devil worship that suggests he's never actually read any of these mathematical texts, probably because he can't count past the number of gold pieces in his purse. The irony of Europeans calling your advanced astronomical calculations primitive superstition while they still believe disease is caused by bad smells would be hilarious if it weren't for all the burning. Your teacher stands frozen as soldiers grab the Venus tables you've spent years memorizing. The bark paper crackles as it feeds the bonfire, each page releasing smoke that carries away eclipse predictions stretching to the year 3000. The soldiers laugh and joke in Spanish, making comments about savage picture books while destroying mathematical knowledge that won't be rediscovered by European science for another 2 centuries. One particularly thick conquistador uses a sacred eclipse codex to wipe his boots before tossing it into the flames, which is probably the most expensive shoe cleaning in human history. The real tragedy isn't just the physical destruction, it's the systematic elimination of the intellectual framework. The Spanish banned the number system, declaring base 20 counting satanic because apparently Satan has opinions about mathematical bases. They prohibit astronomical observations, claiming that predicting eclipses is witchcraft rather than applied mathematics. Your entire education becomes illegal overnight. 20 years of memorizing cosmic cycles, and now you're supposed to pretend you can't calculate when the moon will darken. It's like asking a musician to forget what sound is. You watch them topple the observatory stele, each carved stone containing centuries of accumulated observations. The crash echoes across the plaza like the universe itself groaning in pain. These monuments recorded eclipse paths with sub-degree accuracy, chronicled Venus positions across decades, and preserved calculations that predicted celestial events into the far future. Now they're rubble, useful only for building churches where people will pray to a god who apparently created the cosmos but doesn't want anyone doing the math to understand it. The priest's response reveals desperate ingenuity. While soldiers burn the public codices, secret copies disappear into hidden caches. Your teacher assigns each student a section of the eclipse tables to memorize perfectly, not just the numbers, but the exact glyph forms, the paint colors, even the brushstroke directions. You become a living book, carrying 50 pages of astronomical data in your neurons. At night, students meet in caves to recite calculations to each other, keeping the knowledge alive through oral tradition. It's the world's most important and dangerous study group. Some codices get smuggled out in brilliantly mundane ways. The Venus tables hide inside hollowed bread loaves. Eclipse predictions wrap around corn cobs before husking. One priest transforms an entire astronomical treatise into a woven pattern on seemingly innocent textiles to Spanish eyes. It's just native clothing, but each thread intersection represents a mathematical relationship. Your people are literally wearing their science, hiding calculus in plain sight on their backs. The Spanish replacement for your sophisticated astronomy is laughably inadequate. They insist on using the Julian calendar, which is already 10 days out of sync with solar reality. Their eclipse predictions rely on European tables that don't account for longitude differences, leading to spectacular failures that your 6-year-old apprentices could have corrected. You bite your tongue when Spanish astronomers proudly announce an eclipse time that's off by 3 hours, remembering how your mentors achieved minute-level precision using corn kernels and water clocks. The cultural mathematics shifts underground. Farmers still plant by Venus cycles, but call it following grandmother's wisdom. Midwives track lunar phases, but describe it as women's intuition. Eclipse predictions spread through seemingly innocent songs about rabbits, the moon goddess's pet, getting hungry, eclipse, and eating shadows, totality. Your entire civilization develops a code where advanced astronomy masquerades as folklore, its intellectual resistance through nursery rhymes. The personal cost hits when they arrest your teacher for sorcery, specifically accurately predicting a lunar eclipse that the Spanish astronomers missed. His trial is a farce where they ask him to denounce devil mathematics and accept that the earth is flat. He responds by calmly explaining precession of the equinoxes using Christian metaphors, which confuses the inquisitors so much they commute his burning to mere life imprisonment. You visit him in jail, where he continues calculating eclipse cycles by scratching marks on the stone walls with his fingernails. Even imprisoned, he's a better astronomer than his captors will ever be. The destruction continues for months. They burn the medical texts that correlate healing herbs with lunar phases. They destroy the architectural guides that use astronomical alignment. They even torch the children's educational codices that teach counting through star patterns. It's not just astronomy they're erasing, it's an entire worldview where mathematics and spirituality interweave, where understanding the cosmos is a form of worship rather than heresy. Watching your civilization's intellectual achievements turn to ash while conquerors celebrate their ignorance is a special kind of agony that transcends language and time. The corn grinding stone feels heavier now that it's hollow, packed with forbidden astronomical knowledge that could get you burned as a witch if the Spanish find it. You're part of an underground network smuggling codices inside everyday objects, meta teas, water jars, even false bottoms in tortilla baskets. Your teacher, now under house arrest for suspiciously accurate weather predictions, coordinates the operation using flower arrangements that spell out distribution routes in extinct numerical notation. It's the world's nerdiest spy network, where the state secrets are eclipse tables and the enemy is willful ignorance. Your current cargo is particularly valuable, the Master Venus calculations that predict eclipses for the next 400 years, painted on deer hide so thin it folds into a package smaller than your palm. The hiding spot is ingenious, carved into the grinding stone's base, sealed with pine resin mixed with ground jade that makes it invisible to casual inspection. You've been trained to grind corn in specific patterns that avoid the hidden compartment while producing normal-looking cornmeal. If questioned, you're just a simple peasant making tomorrow's tortillas. Definitely not transporting advanced astronomical data that would make European scientists weep with envy. The network operates on multiple levels. Public-facing members maintain the illusion of compliance, attending Mass while secretly timing prayers to Venus cycles. Deep cover operatives work as servants in Spanish households, memorizing which conquistadors can barely read their own language, let alone recognize Mayan mathematical notation. The real heroes are the grandmothers who've turned traditional weaving patterns into textile computers, encoding eclipse predictions in huipil designs that Spanish wives wear unknowingly. Imagine having the cosmic secrets of the universe decorating your oppressor's Sunday best. Transportation methods evolve from desperate creativity. One priest hollows out prayer beads, each bead containing a microscopic codex page that requires jeweler's tools to extract and read. Children carry astronomical data in their hair, complex braiding patterns that represent planetary positions to those who know the code. Even funeral preparations become smuggling opportunities. Corpses get buried with hidden codices, preserving knowledge for future archaeologists while technically complying with Spanish orders to bury your pagan ways. Your most audacious smuggling run involves transporting the eclipse measurement instruments. These aren't just hidden, they're transformed. The obsidian mirrors become cooking surfaces blackened with soot. Jade observation tubes masquerade as primitive flutes that play mysteriously off-key because they're designed for optical precision, not music. The sacred counting boards are disassembled, their components scattered among different carriers as decorative inlays that just happen to reassemble into functional calculators. It's intellectual contraband hidden through aggressive mundanity. The Spanish occasionally catch smugglers, leading to brutal interrogations where they demand to know what these devil marks mean. The standard response, drilled into every network member, is to claim their recipes or love letters. One captured grandmother spent 6 hours convincing an inquisitor that complex Venus calculations were actually instructions for fermenting particularly strong pulque. He believed her because the numbers were so advanced he couldn't conceive they were astronomy. Sometimes your best defense is your enemy's intellectual limitations. Code systems evolve rapidly. What starts as simple substitution, replacing astronomical terms with agricultural ones, becomes elaborate metaphorical structures. Eclipse predictions hide in songs about harvest cycles. Planetary positions encode into traditional dances where each step represents celestial coordinates. Even children's games adapt. That innocent-looking ball court match is actually a physical demonstration of orbital mechanics where the ball represents Earth and players trace out planetary paths. The Spanish see native culture being preserved and have no idea they're watching astronomy lessons. The psychological warfare cuts both ways. Spanish priests, frustrated by their inability to predict eclipses accurately, increasingly rely on confiscated Mayan calculations while publicly denouncing them as witchcraft. You know of at least 3 conquistadors who secretly consult indigenous astronomers for agricultural timing while publicly supporting the knowledge burning. The hypocrisy would be amusing if it weren't built on the ashes of your civilization's libraries. Personal moments of resistance bring small satisfactions. When a Spanish astronomer proudly announces an eclipse prediction that's wrong by 2 days, you quietly inform local farmers of the correct date, credited to ancient wisdom rather than precise calculations. Watching Spanish nobles panic during an unexpected eclipse while your people calmly continue their daily activities, having known about it for months, provides a special kind of joy. It's intellectual superiority expressed through aggressive nonchalance. The most precious smuggled items aren't always the grand astronomical treatises, but the teaching tools, the children's counting books that use star patterns, the simple rhymes that encode multiplication tables, the wooden toys that demonstrate lunar phases. Your network prioritizes these because they know the real preservation isn't just in hiding knowledge, but in ensuring the next generation can understand it. A codex in a grinding stone preserves information. A child who can count in base 20 preserves capability. Your delivery completes successfully, the grinding stone passing to the next carrier who'll transport it deeper into the mountain network. The Venus tables will eventually reach a hidden school where young Maya continue learning the true movements of the heavens. You return to grinding corn, the repetitive motion meditative after the stress of smuggling. Each kernel crushed is a small rebellion. You're not just making meal, but maintaining the rhythm of resistance, preserving the cosmic heartbeat of a civilization that refuses to forget how to count the stars. The Spanish can burn paper and topple stones, but they can't erase the mathematics encoded in memory, muscle, and maze. The crystal skull sits on the museum table like the world's most expensive paperweight that might also be an ancient astronomical computer or possibly just colonial-era tourist kitsch. Modern archaeologists can't quite decide. You're part of a team using everything from electron microscopes to ground penetrating radar to determine whether these artifacts are genuine pre Columbian eclipse calculators or elaborate hoaxes crafted by bored Victorian jewelers with too much time and quartz. The skull's eye sockets seem to follow you around the room, which is either an optical illusion or confirmation that ancient Maya astronomers had a wicked sense of humor about their scientific instruments. Your initial examination reveals tool marks that make no sense. The crystal shows evidence of precision grinding that shouldn't have been possible without modern equipment. Yet carbon dating of microscopic plant material trapped in surface imperfections suggests legitimate antiquity. The skull's dimensions correspond eerily to astronomical constants. The cranium's circumference equals the number of days in a sacred calendar round, while specific angles between facial features match eclipse intersection parameters. It's either the most elaborate coincidence in archaeological history or proof your ancestors were showing off in ways that would make modern engineers nervous. The real breakthrough comes when you accidentally, or maybe guided by ancestral spirits, depending on your belief system, shine a laser through the skull during a lunar eclipse. The crystal's eternal structure creates diffraction patterns that map upcoming eclipse paths with disturbing accuracy. It's essentially a three-dimensional holographic computer that uses light refraction to calculate celestial mechanics. Your colleagues spend 6 hours arguing whether this is evidence of advanced Maya optics or just pareidolia on steroids. The skull, meanwhile, continues projecting eclipse maps like it's been waiting centuries for someone to figure out the user manual. Other discoveries pile up faster than grant funding. Ground-penetrating radar at known astronomical sites reveals hidden chambers filled with what appear to be calculation devices made from materials that shouldn't exist in pre-Columbian contexts. One cache contains obsidian spheres ground to tolerances that rival modern ball bearings, arranged in patterns matching planetary orbits. Another site yields copper gears that form a mechanical calendar calculator predating similar European devices by 800 years. Each find rewrites textbooks while spawning angry academic debates about what constitutes acceptable ancient technology. The most controversial discovery is the Corn Codex, not made from bark paper, but literally encoded in corn genetics. A Maya farmer mentions his family has maintained specific corn varieties for generations, planted in patterns that seem agriculturally insane, but religiously important. DNA analysis reveals genetic markers that shouldn't naturally occur together, arranged in sequences that match astronomical cycles. It's either evidence of sophisticated genetic manipulation or the world's longest-running accidental selective breeding program. The implications make both archaeologists and Monsanto executives extremely uncomfortable. Traditional knowledge holders complicate everything by casually mentioning techniques mainstream archaeology considers impossible. An elderly daykeeper demonstrates eclipse prediction using only shadows, water ripples, and intuition, achieving accuracy that matches computer models. When pressed for explanation, she shrugs and says her grandmother taught her to feel the moon's hunger, which isn't exactly publishable methodology. Another keeper shows you cave paintings that change appearance during eclipses, pigments that react to subtle electromagnetic variations during totality. Your scientific instruments confirm the effect, but nobody wants to write the paper explaining ancient Maya electromagnetic awareness. The political battles over these discoveries make academic conferences resemble gladiatorial combat with PowerPoint presentations. Conservative archaeologists insist any technology beyond primitive tools must be colonial contamination or modern hoaxes. Progressive researchers argue for reassessing assumptions about indigenous capabilities. Meanwhile, descendant communities watch bemused as academics argue about whether their ancestors were capable of achievements their oral histories have always claimed. It's particularly galling when European scholars insist Maya couldn't have developed advanced optics while standing in temples aligned to celestial events with precision that required advanced optics. Your research takes an unexpected turn when comparing colonial era suppression documents with modern findings. Spanish Inquisition records, previously dismissed as religious hysteria, describe confiscated Maya devices in terms that match your archaeological discoveries. One report mentions devil stones that show false suns, possibly referring to crystal eclipse predictors. Another describes counting wheels that turn like time itself, potentially the mechanical calendars. The conquistadors may have accidentally provided the best documentation of the very knowledge they tried to destroy. The Crystal Skull Project culminates in a public demonstration during a total solar eclipse. Using the artifact according to patterns suggested by traditional knowledge and confirmed by optical analysis, you successfully project not just the current eclipse, but the next 6 eclipse paths across a century. The accuracy makes NASA scientists in attendance go very quiet. The skull performs calculations that require tertiary differential equations using nothing but crystal structure and sunlight. It's either proof of lost ancient technology or evidence that the universe has a deeper mathematical structure accessible through crystalline meditation, possibly both. Modern Maya communities receive these discoveries with polite interest tinged with generational exhaustion. Of course, their ancestors had advanced astronomy. How else would they have predicted eclipses? The crystal skulls? Obviously computational devices, though some families prefer traditional corn kernel methods as more reliable. The genetic corn encoding? Well, yes, but it's really meant for backup storage since oral tradition works fine until colonizers burn your grandparents. The archaeological community's groundbreaking finds are essentially white people slowly discovering what was never actually lost, just actively ignored. Its vindication served at the speed of academic publishing, which is to say, glacially. The corn in your experimental field grows in spirals that would make Fibonacci weep with mathematical joy, each plant positioned according to eclipse cycles recorded in your great-grandmother's smuggled codices. You're part of a new generation combining ancestral knowledge with modern genetics, discovering that what Spanish colonizers dismissed as primitive agriculture was actually sophisticated astronomical biotechnology. Your PhD thesis on Chronobiological markers in heritage maize cultivars is really just a fancy way of saying my ancestors encoded the universe in corn DNA, and I can prove it. The genetic sequences reveal patterns that shouldn't exist through natural selection alone. Specific markers activate during eclipse seasons, altering growth rates and kernel development in ways that create living calendars. Plant corn variety A during a lunar eclipse, and it matures in exactly 260 days. Variety B planted at Venus heliacal rising produces kernels whose color ratios match planetary visibility cycles. It's agricultural astronomy where the field itself becomes a calculating device. Your industrial agriculture neighbors think you're crazy until your yield predictions, based on thousand-year-old astronomical planting guides, outperform their computer models by 15%. Modern Maya communities have been quietly maintaining these varieties for centuries, preserving them through what outsiders saw as stubborn traditionalism. Doña Elena, whose family has grown calendar corn for 30 generations, explains the system while hand pollinating plants under specific stellar configurations. The corn remembers the sky, she says, transferring pollen with a jade tool that's been in her family since before Columbus got lost. She's not speaking metaphorically. Epigenetic analysis shows that astronomical timing of pollination creates heritable changes in gene expression that persist across generations. Your research attracts interest from unexpected sources. NASA scientists want to understand how pre-industrial civilizations achieved such precise, long-term astronomical observations. Tech companies investigate whether biological systems can store computational data more efficiently than silicon. The Defense Department shows concerning interest in agricultural knowledge preservation systems, which is definitely not ominous at all. Meanwhile, you're just trying to figure out why corn planted during the 2017 eclipse grows in patterns that predict the 2024 eclipse path with GPS level accuracy. The collaboration between traditional knowledge keepers and modern science produces revelations that challenge both worldviews. Elders demonstrate corn divination techniques that consistently predict weather patterns weeks in advance, not through mysticism, but by reading subtle genetic expressions that respond to atmospheric pressure changes. Scientists discover that root networks of calendar corn create electromagnetic fields that fluctuate with lunar phases. It's biomechanical astronomy, where the entire agricultural system functions as a living sensor array. The most profound discovery comes from mapping heritage corn genetics against historical eclipse records. The correlation is undeniable. Major genetic variations coincide with significant astronomical events over millennia. Your ancestors weren't just breeding for nutrition or yield, they were creating a biological backup system for astronomical knowledge. Each kernel contains chemical signatures that preserve eclipse dates, planetary cycles, and even cometary appearances. It's the ultimate long-term storage solution. Even if civilizations fall and libraries burn, the corn remembers. Traditional planting ceremonies take on new meaning when you understand the science behind them. The superstitious requirement to plant certain varieties only during specific moon phases, It activates genes that improve drought resistance. The elaborate rituals involving Venus observations before harvest, they time collection to maximize beneficial alkaloid production. The seemingly arbitrary field arrangements that Spanish agriculturalists mocked, they create microenvironments that amplify subtle astronomical influences on plant development. Your ancestors turned the entire landscape into a biotechnological observatory. The practical applications extend beyond agriculture. Medical researchers discover that corn varieties planted during eclipses produce unique compounds with pharmaceutical potential. One variety, traditionally used for treating shadow sickness, probably eclipse-related anxiety, contains neurotransmitter precursors that modern science is just beginning to understand. Another eclipse corn variety produces proteins that seem to regulate circadian rhythms in humans who consume it regularly. Your ancestors weren't just tracking the cosmos, they were biochemically harmonizing human biology with celestial cycles. The resistance aspect becomes clear when you realize this system survived 5 centuries of suppression. Spanish colonizers could burn books and topple observatories, but they couldn't stop farmers from planting corn. Every tortilla made from calendar corn was an act of intellectual rebellion. Every harvest timed to Venus cycles was a secret astronomy lesson. Your ancestors hid an entire university's worth of knowledge in agricultural practice, betting correctly that colonizers would overlook primitive farming while destroying obvious intellectual artifacts. Modern eclipse tourism brings unexpected validation. Visitors expecting mystical ceremonies instead find Maya communities conducting citizen science projects that combine traditional knowledge with smartphone apps. Children who can calculate eclipse paths using both corn kernels and trigonometry lead workshops for astrophysicists who leave humbled. The ancient calendar corn grows alongside solar panels and satellite dishes, creating a technological synthesis that honors both tradition and innovation. It's particularly satisfying when European tourists realize the quaint folklore they came to observe is actually advanced science their own ancestors tried to destroy. Your field notebook fills with observations that read like science fiction but photograph as fact. Corn that changes color hours before an eclipse. Root systems that orient themselves to true astronomical north regardless of magnetic variation. Kernel patterns that encode the same mathematical constants found in pyramid construction and codex calculations. Each growing season reveals new layers of embedded knowledge, suggesting your ancestors achieved an integration of astronomy, agriculture, and biotechnology that modern civilization is only beginning to rediscover. The corn remembers what colonialism tried to make the world forget, and now it's teaching anyone willing to listen. The tour group assembles at 4 a.m. because apparently cosmic enlightenment requires sleep deprivation. They're matching eclipse t-shirts glowing under hotel floodlights like a congregation of astronomical pilgrims who've confused spiritual awakening with souvenir shopping. You're their guide for this hybrid experience, part ancient wisdom, part NASA precision, part crowd control for people who think crystals can photograph eclipses better than cameras. Your grandmother's cornmeal divination predicted this exact eclipse path in 1962, but you'll be combining her techniques with satellite data because accuracy matters more than authenticity when people are paying $500 to stare at the sun safely. The ceremony site buzzes with preparations that blend the sacred and absurd. Traditional Maya priests set up altars next to food trucks selling eclipse burritos, just regular burritos eaten during an eclipse, but marketing is everything. Musicians tune conch shells while sound technicians adjust speakers for the live NASA feed. You're distributing both protective eclipse glasses and blessed corn kernels, explaining how ancient Maya astronomers achieved naked eye observations without retinal damage through precisely timed glimpses reflected in obsidian water, a technique you absolutely do not recommend trying because lawsuits exist now. Your opening presentation walks the fascinating line between education and entertainment. You explain how Maya astronomers predicted this eclipse using Venus tables and bloodletting visions while carefully avoiding mention that the bloodletting often involved genital perforation because this is a family-friendly event. The PowerPoint slides showing original codex calculations sit alongside NASA's computer models, demonstrating that both reach the same conclusion through vastly different methodologies. A few audience members seem disappointed that ancient astronomy involved more mathematics than mysticism, but they perk up when you mention the jaguar transformation rituals, which were metaphorical, but you let them maintain their fantasies. The fusion of traditions creates beautiful absurdities. Elder daykeepers perform calculations using traditional beans and boards while live streaming on Instagram. Children dressed as ancient astronomers explain eclipse mechanics using both mythological narratives and undergraduate physics. The ceremonial drums sync with atomic clock countdowns. Even the sacred cornmeal gets an upgrade. You're using heritage varieties DNA verified to match pre-Columbian cultivars, ground in traditional metates, but packaged in biodegradable containers with QR codes linking to educational websites. It's what your ancestors would have done if they'd had smartphones and liability insurance. Tourist reactions range from genuine awe to comical misunderstanding. One couple insists on burying their wedding rings in cornmeal during totality to strengthen their celestial bond, which isn't traditional but sounds romantic enough that nobody corrects them. A tech executive pays extra for the authentic shaman experience, then spends the ceremony checking his phone for stock updates. Meanwhile, a group of school children from Guatemala City ignore the tourists entirely, performing traditional calculations with such precision that visiting astrophysicists take notes. The real magic happens when cultures converge without anyone trying to force profundity. The unexpected moments provide the best stories. A traditionally dressed grandmother explains eclipse mythology to a NASA scientist who realizes her oral history contains observational details matching satellite data. Tourists attempting to pronounce Mayan numbers accidentally create poetry that makes the elders laugh. Someone's emotional support peacock, because of course, escapes during the ceremony, leading to a chase scene that definitely wasn't in any ancient prophecies, but provides comic relief during the pre-totality tension. These unscripted interactions honor the Maya tradition of finding humor in cosmic events. Your ancestors believed laughter confused eclipse demons, though it probably just helped manage astronomical anxiety. The eclipse itself arrives with mathematical precision and emotional chaos. The corona appears exactly as the corn divination predicted, as NASA confirmed, and as your grandmother dreamed. Tourists weep, photograph, and frantically journal their spiritual experiences. Traditional practitioners perform ceremonies that have continued unbroken for centuries, unbothered by the smartphone recordings. You stand between worlds, translating ancient wisdom for modern seekers while ensuring nobody does anything dangerously stupid in their enthusiasm. The shadow passes, the sun returns, and everyone agrees they've been transformed, though mostly they're just sunburned and dehydrated. Post-eclipse activities blend commerce with culture. The gift shop sells everything from astronomically accurate calendar rounds to eclipse-blessed corn jewelry that's definitely not traditional but supports local artisans. Workshops teach simplified versions of Maya mathematics that tourists can theoretically use to predict the next eclipse, though most will just frame their certificates and forget the actual calculations. The closing ceremony features a modern poem about cosmic cycles, written in Spanish, English, and Yucatec Maya, performed by a teenager who calculated the eclipse path using both ancient and modern methods for his or science fair project. The financial success enables real cultural preservation. Tourist dollars fund language programs, subsidize traditional astronomy education, and maintain sacred sites. It's capitalist colonialism inverted. Instead of destroying indigenous knowledge for profit, you're packaging it carefully for consumption while keeping the core intact. Your grandmother would find it hilarious that the same outsiders who once burned codices now pay premium prices for 2-hour workshops on corn divination. The irony is delicious, served with a side of economic justice. As buses carry tourists back to their hotels, you perform the closing rituals with the local team. The ceremonial items are carefully stored, the altar dismantled with appropriate prayers, the site cleaned of any trace of the morning's activities. Tomorrow you'll check social media for tourist posts, cringing at misrepresentations while appreciating the enthusiasm. The eclipse tourism industry is imperfect, sometimes absurd, often reductive, but it's also creating space for Maya astronomical knowledge to exist publicly, funded and celebrated rather than hidden and suppressed. Your ancestors predicted eclipses to maintain cosmic order. Now you're predicting tourist behavior to maintain cultural survival. Both require careful observation, mathematical precision, and the patience to deal with forces beyond your control. The morning of April 8th, 2024, arrives with the weight of centuries settling on your shoulders like a ceremonial cloak made of time itself. You stand at the exact coordinates your ancestors calculated using corn kernels and obsidian mirrors, coordinates that match NASA's predictions down to the meter. The cornmeal in your hands comes from plants whose genetic lineage stretches back to the first Maya astronomers, ground in the same metate your grandmother used. your great-grandmother smuggled calculations in, and countless generations blessed with mathematical precision. This eclipse isn't just another celestial event. It's the culmination of patterns your people have been tracking since before Europeans knew the Earth was round. The divination performed at dawn revealed what you already knew from both ancestral records and modern calculations. Totality will last 4 minutes and 28 seconds at your location. The moon's shadow will sweep across the land at 2,000 miles per hour, and something significant ends and begins with this cosmic alignment. The corn kernels formed patterns your grandmother documented in 1962, your lineage preserved through colonialism, and NASA's computers confirmed last week. 3 different knowledge systems: ancient Maya, traditional preservation, and modern science, converging on the same truth like light rays focusing through a lens. Your role today transcends tour guide or cultural interpreter. You're a living bridge between the astronomers who bled for knowledge and the tourists who buy it packaged in gift shops, between calculations carved in stone and algorithms coded in silicon, between a worldview where eclipses were negotiations with cosmic demons and one where they're predictable intersections of orbital planes. The ancient Maya knew both perspectives were true. The mathematics and mythology intertwined like DNA strands, encoding the same essential information about humanity's place in the cosmic dance. The crowd gathering includes everyone from Instagram influencers positioning ring lights to capture their spiritual transformation, to elderly daykeepers who've been preparing for this specific eclipse since childhood visions. PhD astrophysicists stand next to traditional healers, both groups equally awed by the approaching shadow. Children who can code in Python and calculate in base 20 Maya numerals represent a future where indigenous knowledge and modern technology enhance rather than replace each other. Even the vendors selling overpriced eclipse merchandise participate in the economic ecosystem that funds cultural preservation. Capitalism as an unlikely ally in maintaining astronomical traditions. As the moon begins its journey across the sun, you feel the temperature drop that your ancestors documented, the birds beginning their confused evening songs, the shadows sharpening into crescent patterns between leaves. The corona emerges exactly as the Venus tables predicted, as the blood divination revealed, as the crystal skulls calculated, as the corn genetics encoded. Every prediction method your people developed over millennia converges on this moment of cosmic alignment. The tourists gasp and weep, experiencing for 4 minutes what your ancestors spent lifetimes studying. The moment of totality brings unexpected clarity. All the threads of this narrative, from grinding sacred corn at dawn to smuggling codices in hollowed stones, from bloodletting visions to DNA analysis of heritage maize, weave together into a pattern as elegant as the eclipse itself. Your ancestors didn't just predict celestial mechanics. They created a knowledge system so robust it survived apocalyptic suppression, so deeply embedded it grew back from cultural ashes, so true it transcends the artificial boundaries between science and spirituality. As the sun emerges from behind the moon, painting the landscape in impossible colors, You realize this eclipse marks not an ending, but a transformation. The ancient fear of cosmic devourment has evolved into tourist revenue. Secret knowledge hidden from conquistadors now streams globally via satellite. Children learn equations their ancestors encoded in corn genes. The same mathematical truths that once required decades of priest training now fit in smartphone apps, democratizing astronomical knowledge in ways that would either horrify or delight those ancient scholar priests, probably both. The ceremony concludes with your grandmother's words, spoken first in Yucatec Maya, then Spanish, finally English. The shadow passes, but the light remembers its path. The corn holds the count. The sky writes its story in cycles within cycles, and we are both readers and letters in that cosmic text. The tourists applaud, thinking they understand, while the deeper truth settles into those ready to receive it. Knowledge isn't preserved by hiding it, but by transforming it, adapting its expression while maintaining its essence, like corn that changes its growth patterns while keeping its genetic memory intact. As the crowds disperse, you remain with the elders, performing the quiet closing rituals that thank the cosmos for its predictable mystery. The eclipse glasses get packed away, but the mathematical patterns remain encoded in memory, mythology, and maze. Tomorrow, someone will analyze the photos, someone else will update the databases, children will draw their eclipse experiences, and farmers will note how the shadow-touched corn grows differently. The great work continues, observing, calculating, predicting, preserving. The 2024 eclipse passes into history exactly as foretold by bloodletting visions and NASA calculations, by corn divination and differential equations, by crystal skulls and computer models. Your ancestors' genius wasn't in choosing one knowledge system over another, but in recognizing that truth reveals itself through multiple channels. They preserved their astronomy not in single codices, but in distributed networks of meaning, in genes and stones, in stories and dances, in blood and stars. Tonight, as you fall asleep, you'll dream of numbers dancing in base 20 patterns, of Venus rising malevolent and beautiful, of corn that remembers the sky's mathematical heartbeat. The ancient Maya predicted eclipses to maintain cosmic order, encoding their knowledge so deeply that 5 centuries of suppression only scattered the seeds wider. Now their intellectual descendants, geneticists and farmers, programmers and daykeepers, tourists and traditionalists, carry that knowledge forward. Each kernel of understanding planted for future generations to harvest when the shadow comes round again. The lights dim slowly, like consciousness fading into the peaceful darkness of sleep. Your breathing deepens, matching the rhythm of cosmic cycles that your ancestors traced in blood and jade, in corn and calculation. The universe continues its eternal dance of shadow and light, predictable yet mysterious, mathematical yet mythological. The eclipse demons have been fed and pacified for another cycle. The corn remembers, the patterns persist, and somewhere in the space between sleeping and waking, between ancient wisdom and modern knowledge, between the last word and silence, you find the peace that comes from knowing your place in the vast, turning wheels of time. Sweet dreams, Fellow traveler, the stars are watching, and they remember everything